My son texted me, "Don't come to my wedding. My wife doesn't want to see you." I stared at the screen for exactly 5 seconds. Then I silently closed his bank accounts. I froze his credit cards. I revoked the corporate funding for his startup. The next day, they showed up at my doorstep, screaming. But by then, it was already too late. Before I tell you how I destroyed my own son's financial empire with a single phone call, please let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to teach an ungrateful family member a lesson they will never forget. I stood in the center of the private fitting room at Masterson's in Helena, Montana. The air smelled of cedar, expensive wool, and old money. The tailor, a man named Giovanni, who had been dressing governors and oil tycoons for 40 years, was on his knees pinning the hem of my trousers. "Mr. Sullivan," Giovanni mumbled through a mouthful of pins, "this Italian silk is exquisite. You will be the most distinguished man at the Plaza Hotel." I looked at my reflection in the three-way mirror. At 73 years old, I still had the shoulders of the linebacker I used to be, and the cold gray eyes of the venture capitalist I became. I looked dignified. I looked like a father ready to watch his only son get married. This tuxedo cost $5,000. I had ordered it specifically for Brandon's wedding in New York City. I wanted to look the part. I wanted to make him proud, even though he had spent the last decade being ashamed of me. My phone buzzed on the velvet bench beside me. It was a singular, sharp vibration that cut through the silence of the shop. "Excuse me, Giovanni." I reached for the phone. The screen lit up with a message from Brandon. My heart did that foolish thing it always did when my son reached out. It jumped with hope. Maybe he was asking if I had booked my flight. Maybe he wanted to know if I wanted to give a toast. I unlocked the screen. The message was long. It was detailed. And it was the blade that finally severed the last cord connecting us. "Dad," it read, "Brittany and I have been talking. We think it is best if you do not come to the ceremony or the reception on Saturday. Brittany has worked very hard on the royal aesthetic of the wedding. To be honest, your presence, your truck, your general style, it just doesn't fit the brand we are trying to project for the magazine coverage. We will send you photos after. Please do not make this complicated. We need this day to be perfect." I read it twice. The first time I felt a physical blow to my chest, as if the air had been sucked out of the room. The second time I felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. It was a cold, hollow silence where my love for my son used to be. The royal aesthetic. The magazine coverage. My style. He was talking about me, Conrad Sullivan, the man who had quietly built the financial foundation he stood on. He saw a retired old man in flannel shirts and muddy boots living on a ranch in Montana. He saw a country bumpkin. He did not see the man who had survived the sharks of Wall Street for 40 years. He did not see the man who had anonymously funneled $500,000 into a trust to pay for this very wedding because Brandon wanted to impress his high society friends. Giovanni looked up, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. "Is everything all right, Mr. Sullivan, the fit? Is it uncomfortable?" I looked at Giovanni. I looked at the Italian silk. I looked at the reflection of a man who had just been discarded like a piece of trash by his own flesh and blood. "Stop," I said. My voice was calm. It was the voice I used to use in boardrooms right before I acquired a company and fired the entire management team. Giovanni froze. "Sir." "Take it off," I said. "But sir, we are almost done. The wedding is in 3 days. "There is no wedding," I replied, unbuttoning the jacket. "Not for me." I stepped out of the trousers, leaving them in a pile on the floor. I put on my worn denim jeans. I buttoned my flannel shirt. I pulled on my boots. I was transforming back into the man they despised, but also the man they feared without knowing it. "Cancel the order, Giovanni." "But Mr. Sullivan, you have already paid the deposit. It is non-refundable." Keep it, I said, grabbing my keys. Burn the suit. Or give it to someone who actually has a family that respects him. I walked out of the shop into the crisp Montana air. The sun was shining, but the world looked different now. It looked sharper. The shadows were darker. I climbed into my Ford F-150. It was 10 years old, with a dent on the bumper from a bull I had to wrangle last winter. Brandon hated this truck. He said it was embarrassing. He drove a Porsche in Manhattan, a Porsche that I was technically paying for through a shell company, though he believed his genius business acumen covered the lease. I sat in the driver's seat and looked at the phone again. I did not reply. I did not type out a long, emotional plea asking why. I did not beg. Begging is for people who have no power. I had all the power. I had just chosen not to use it. Until now. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I needed. Mr. Goldman. Goldman was my attorney. He was my fixer. He was the only man in New York who knew exactly how much I was worth and exactly where every skeleton was buried. He answered on the first ring. Conrad Goldman said. His voice was gravel and Scotch. I assume you are calling about the final transfer for the wedding catering. The Plaza Hotel is demanding the last $200,000. I stared through the windshield at the mountains in the distance. No, I said. There was a pause. No, Conrad. The wedding is Saturday. If we don't wire the funds by noon, they will lose the venue. I know, I said. That is the point. Goldman went silent. He was a smart man. He knew the tone of my voice. He knew what it meant when I stopped using pleasantries. What happened? He asked. Brandon uninvited me, I said. Via text message. Apparently I ruined the aesthetic. I heard Goldman exhale slowly. That boy. I told you, Conrad. I told you spoiling him was a mistake. You were right, I admitted. It is a mistake I am about to correct. Goldman listened to me very carefully. I want you to initiate the Omega Protocol. The line went dead silent. The Omega Protocol was a nuclear option. We had drafted it 5 years ago when Brandon first started his tech company mainly as a failsafe in case he got involved with drugs or gambling. It was a legal mechanism that allowed me to instantly recall every loan freeze, every asset, and lock down every trust fund associated with the Sullivan name. Conrad Goldman said, his voice dropping an octave. Are you sure the Omega Protocol isn't just a slap on the wrist? It is total financial annihilation. If I pull that lever, his company accounts freeze. His personal credit cards lock. The lease on the penthouse, the car, the insurance. Everything goes dark. He will be on the street in 24 hours. Do it, I said. Conrad, he is your son. No, I said, starting the engine of the truck. He is a stranger who thinks he is a king. It is time he learned that he is just a man standing on a pile of money that isn't his. Execute it now, Goldman. And one more thing. Yes, I want a full forensic audit of his company, the Phoenix startup. I want to know where every cent has gone in the last 18 months. I have a feeling the numbers aren't going to add up. Consider it done, Goldman said. I hung up. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat. I drove back to my ranch, the tires crunching on the gravel. I drove past the fences I had built with my own hands. I drove past the herds of cattle I raised. This was my life. It was real. It was tangible. What Brandon and his wife Brittany lived in was a bubble. A beautiful, shimmering bubble of champagne and Instagram likes. And I had just pulled out the needle. When I got home, I went straight to my study. My ranch house looks rustic from the outside. Log walls, stone chimney, a porch with a rocking chair. But inside my study, it is a different world. I have a secure server rack in the closet. I have 3 monitors on my desk, connected to the Bloomberg terminal. I might be retired, but I never stopped watching the money. I sat down in my leather chair and logged into the administrative back end of the Sullivan Family Trust. This was the main artery. This was the heart that pumped blood into Brandon's life. I watched the screen. Goldman was fast. I saw the status of the accounts changing in real time. Brandon's personal checking status, frozen. Brandon's Platinum Amex status, suspended, reported stolen. The Phoenix Company operating account status, locked for audit. The wedding fund status, recalled. I leaned back in my chair. The room was silent save for the hum of the computer fans. I thought about Brittany. I had only met her 3 times. She was beautiful in a sharp, manufactured way. She was an influencer, whatever that meant. She spent her days taking photos of coffee cups and handbags. She looked at me like I was something she had stepped in on the sidewalk. She was the one who whispered in Brandon's ear. She was the one who told him they needed a bigger apartment. She was the one who said my truck was ugly. I wondered how she would react when her credit card was declined at the hair salon. I navigated to the transaction history for Brandon's business card. I wanted to see what my investment in his tech company was actually buying. The screen populated with data. I scanned the lines. I expected to see server costs, software licenses, marketing expenses. Instead, I saw chaos. $5,000 at Cartier, $12,000 at a luxury travel agency, $800 at a Michelin star restaurant on a Tuesday, $50,000 to a floral designer. My jaw tightened. This was corporate embezzlement, plain and simple. He was using the seed money I gave him for his business to fund Brittany's lifestyle. He was burning through capital like it was kindling. And he had the audacity to tell me I ruined the aesthetic. My phone buzzed again. It was a notification from the bank app. Attempted transaction $45,000. Vendor, the Diamond Vault, NYC. Status declined. I smiled. A cold, humorless smile. He was trying to buy jewelry. The day after telling his father he wasn't welcome. He was standing in a store right now, holding a diamond, handing over a card that was nothing more than a piece of plastic. I could imagine the scene. The clerk swiping the card, the frown, the second attempt, Brandon's nervous laugh. Try it again. It must be a chip error. The phone buzzed again. Attempted transaction, $45,000. Vendor, the Diamond Vault, NYC. Status declined. Card seized. I took a sip of the cold coffee sitting on my desk. This wasn't just about money. This was about reality. Brandon had lived 32 years without ever hitting a wall. I had smoothed every road. I had opened every door. I had paid every toll. I had created a monster that thought it was a god. Now gravity was turning back on. I spent the rest of the afternoon watching the notifications roll in like a ticker tape of disaster. Attempted transaction $250. Uber Black. Declined. Attempted transaction $4,200. Saks Fifth Avenue. Declined. Attempted transaction $18. Starbucks. Declined. Even his coffee money was gone. The sun began to set over the mountains, casting long purple shadows across the ranch. The house was quiet. I was alone. I was always alone, but tonight, the solitude felt different. It felt heavy with anticipation. I knew what was coming next. They wouldn't call. Not yet. They were too arrogant to believe I did this. They would assume it was a bank error. They would assume it was a hack. They would spend the next few hours screaming at customer service representatives who couldn't help them. Then the realization would set in. They would call Goldman. Goldman wouldn't answer. Then they would look at the calendar. The wedding was in 3 days. They had no venue payment, no flowers, no food, no rings. They would panic, and then they would come to the source. I went to the kitchen and made myself a simple dinner. Steak and potatoes. I ate in silence. At 9 p.m., my phone rang. It was Brandon. I let it ring. It rang again immediately. I let it ring. Then Brittany called. I turned the phone over, placing it face down on the table. I went out to the porch and sat in the rocking chair. The night air was cooling down. The stars were coming out, millions of them, bright and indifferent. My father built this ranch with nothing but a loan and 2 hands. He taught me that a man is only as good as his word and his work. He taught me that respect is earned, not bought. I had failed to teach Brandon that. I had given him the fruit without teaching him how to plant the tree. Well, the lesson was starting now. I went to bed early. I slept soundly. The next morning, I woke up at 5 a.m., as I always did. I made coffee. I fed the horses. I checked the fences. By 10 a.m., I was pruning the apple trees in the front orchard. It was peaceful work. Snip, snap, removing the dead wood so the tree could grow stronger. That was when I heard it. The roar of an engine that did not belong in Montana. I looked down the long dirt driveway. A cloud of dust was rising. A car was tearing up the road, driving far too fast for the gravel surface. It wasn't a truck. It was a Porsche Cayenne. Black, shiny. Rented mostly likely since his personal car had probably been towed by now. It skidded to a halt in front of the main house, kicking up a storm of dust that coated my apple trees. The doors flew open. Brandon stepped out. He was wearing designer jeans and a t-shirt that probably cost more than my tractor. He looked disheveled. His hair was messy. His eyes were wild. Brittany stepped out from the passenger side. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and heels that were sinking into the dirt. She looked like she was ready to kill someone. I didn't move. I kept my shears in my hand. I snipped a small branch. They marched toward me. They didn't look like a happy couple about to be married. They looked like desperate junkies looking for a fix. Dad, Brandon shouted. He didn't say hello. He didn't apologize for the text. He didn't ask how I was. Dad, what the hell is going on? My cards aren't working. The bank says my accounts are frozen. The hotel is threatening to cancel the wedding. Fix it! He shouted the command like I was his employee. Fix it! I slowly lowered the shears. I turned to look at them. Brittany pushed her sunglasses up onto her head. Her eyes were blazing. Conrad, this isn't funny, she spat. We were humiliated at the jewelry store yesterday. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that is? We have a reputation. You need to call the bank right now and tell them it's a mistake. I looked at them, really looked at them. I saw the fear behind the anger. They were terrified. Their entire identity was wrapped up in money they didn't earn, and suddenly the faucet was dry. I took a rag from my back pocket and wiped the sap off the shears. Hello, Brandon. Hello, Brittany, I said calmly. Nice to see you. I thought I wasn't welcome. Brandon waved his hands dismissively. Dad, stop it. We don't have time for your passive-aggressive games. We are in a crisis. The wedding is in 48 hours. We need the money released now. You need the money, I asked. Yes, Brandon yelled. It's my money. It's my company. You can't just lock me out of my own accounts. I laughed. It was a dry, short sound. Your company, I asked. Brandon, who is the primary shareholder of Phoenix, you are, he said. But that's just a formality for tax purposes. It's my vision. And who signed the guarantee for your penthouse? You did, but... And whose name is on the trust fund that pays your Amex bill every month? Brandon fell silent. He knew. He just didn't like to admit it. Brittany stepped forward. She got right in my face. I could smell her expensive perfume. It smelled like vanilla and entitlement. Listen to me, old man, she hissed. I don't know what kind of power trip you are on, but you are ruining the most important day of my life. If you don't unlock those accounts in the next 5 minutes, I swear to God. You swear what I asked, meeting her gaze. I will make sure you never see your son again. I will make sure you die alone in this miserable farmhouse. I looked at Brandon. He didn't defend me. He didn't tell her to stop. He just stood there waiting for me to cave. He expected me to be the weak father I had always been. He expected me to write a check to make the screaming stop. He expected the wallet to open. But the wallet was closed, and the bank was on fire. I looked at Brittany. Then I looked at Brandon. I leaned on my garden hoe, adopting the posture of a confused, frail old man. I let my hand tremble slightly. I don't understand, I stammered, making my voice sound weak. The bank. I didn't touch the bank. Maybe the computer system is down. You know I'm not good with technology. I saw the look they exchanged. It was a look of pure, predatory relief. They bought it. They thought I was just a senile old fool who had made a mistake, or that it was a coincidence. They thought they were still in charge. Brittany rolled her eyes. Oh my God, he's losing it. Brandon, he probably forgot to sign a renewal form or something. He's useless. Brandon sighed, stepping closer, his voice changing from angry to patronizing. Okay, Dad. Okay. Look, it's probably just a glitch on your end. We can fix it. But we need you to call Goldman and authorize an emergency override. Right now. Can you do that? Can you understand that? He was speaking to me like I was a toddler. I nodded slowly. Call Goldman. Yes, Brandon said, pulling out his phone. Here, I'll dial it for you. Just tell him to give me full access. Tell him you authorize me to handle everything so you don't have to worry about it. It's too much stress for you, Dad. He was trying to take power of attorney. Right there in my orchard, Brittany whispered loud enough for me to hear. Get him to sign the papers later. We'll put him in that home in Billings after the honeymoon. He can't be trusted with the estate anymore. I heard it. Every word. I took the phone from Brandon. Hello, Goldman Conrad. Goldman's voice came through the speaker. I have the audit results. It's worse than we thought. I looked at Brandon. He was smiling encouragingly, waiting for the keys to the kingdom. I put the phone to my ears, turning away so they couldn't hear Goldman. Goldman, I said. They are here. Good, Goldman said. Do you want me to send the sheriff? No, I said. Not yet. Let them play. Increase the pressure. I want the car repo team at the hotel tonight. And cancel their return flights. Understood. I turned back to Brandon and handed him the phone. I told him to look into it, I said, my voice shaking just a little. He said he needs a few hours. The system is complicated. Brandon grabbed the phone. A few hours. Dad, we don't have hours. It is the best I can do, I said, picking up my shears again. I'm just an old farmer, Brandon. I don't understand these high finance things. Brittany groaned. This is a nightmare. Come on, Brandon. Let's go to the bank in town. Maybe we can override it in person if we scream loud enough. They turned and walked back to the Porsche. They didn't say goodbye. They didn't say thank you. I watched them drive away, dust flying. They thought they had won. They thought they had bullied the old man into submission. They thought it was just a glitch. They had no idea that I had just authorized the repo man to take the very car they were driving. They had no idea that the glitch was a permanent deletion of their lifestyle. I went back to pruning my apple trees. Snip, snap. The dead wood had to go. That night, the real war would begin, and I was going to enjoy every second of it. I watched the dust settle on the long driveway after the black Porsche disappeared around the bend. I knew they would be back. I knew it with the certainty of a man who understands the migration patterns of desperate animals. The bank in town was run by Stan, a man I had gone fly fishing with every Sunday for 20 years. Stan knew the Omega Protocol. Stan knew that if my son walked in demanding access to the Sullivan Trust without my physical signature, he was to be treated like a stranger with a bad check. I went inside and made a pot of black coffee. I sat in my leather armchair in the living room, the one facing the door, and I waited. The silence of the ranch was heavy, usually a source of comfort, but today it felt like the calm before a hurricane. I looked around at my home. The rough-hewn timber beams, the stone fireplace that I had built rock by rock, the faded Persian rug that my wife Catherine had bought in Istanbul 30 years ago. It was a place of substance. It was real. 45 minutes later, the roar of the engine returned. This time, there was no hesitation at the gate. The car flew up the driveway, skidding sideways as it braked in front of the porch, crushing a bed of marigolds Catherine had planted before she passed. The front door didn't just open. It was thrown wide with a violence that rattled the window panes. Brandon marched in first. The transformation was complete. The confusion from the orchard was gone, replaced by a red-faced, sweating fury. He looked ridiculous in his designer t-shirt and Italian loafers standing on my hardwood floors with mud caked up to his ankles. He looked like a child playing dress-up in a world he didn't understand. Brittany followed him, and she brought the chaos with her. She was screaming before she even crossed the threshold. Her voice was a high-pitched drill that shattered the peace of my sanctuary. She threw her handbag onto the sofa, a bag that cost more than the yearly salary of my ranch hand, and pointed a manicured finger at my face. "You lied to us," she shrieked. Her face was contorted, ruining the expensive Botox work she had clearly had done for the wedding. "You sat there in your garden and played dumb, but you knew exactly what happened." The bank manager laughed at us. He said the accounts aren't just frozen, he said they are flagged for fraud. Fraud, Conrad. Do you have any idea who I am? I took a slow sip of my coffee. I didn't stand up. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at them. The contrast was almost comical. Here were two people who prided themselves on their image, their brand, their aesthetic. And here they were unraveling in a dusty farmhouse, screaming at an old man in a flannel shirt. Brandon paced the room like a caged tiger. He kicked the leg of the coffee table. "Dad, answer her. Stan said you authorized a full lockdown. He said he couldn't even tell us the balance. He treated me like a criminal. I am the CEO of Phoenix. I need liquidity. I have investors to pay. I have vendors waiting. Investors, I thought." He meant the credit card companies. Vendors, he meant the party planners. I set my coffee cup down with a deliberate clatter. I let my hand shake just enough for them to see. I hunched my shoulders, shrinking myself into the chair. I don't know what Stan is talking about. I mumbled, my voice raspy. I told him to be careful with the accounts. There are so many hackers these days. Maybe he misunderstood. My hearing isn't what it used to be. Brittany let out a groan of pure frustration. She marched over to the fireplace and picked up a framed photo of Catherine. She looked at it with disdain before slamming it face down on the mantel. "He is useless, Brandon," she hissed, not even trying to lower her voice. "Look at him. He is sitting there shaking. He probably told the bank to lock the accounts because he forgot his password again. We are going to lose the plaza because your father is senile." Brandon ran a hand through his hair, destroying his carefully styled look. He looked at me, and for a second I saw a flash of the boy he used to be. The boy who used to ask me for help with his math homework. But then he looked at Brittany, and the boy disappeared. "Dad, listen to me," Brandon said, kneeling beside my chair. He spoke slowly, loudly, as if I were partially deaf. "We need you to sign a paper. It is a power of attorney. It just means that I can go to the bank for you and fix the hacker problem. You don't want the hackers to steal your money, do you? He was treating me like a child. He was trying to manipulate me with fear using a lie I had fed him. I looked into his eyes. They were empty. There was no love there, just greed and panic. I don't know, son, I stammered. Your mother always handled the papers. Mom is dead, Dad, Brandon said bluntly. The cruelty of it hung in the air. He didn't care that it hurt. He just wanted the signature. You have to sign it. Otherwise, we can't protect the ranch. Brittany stepped closer. The smell of her perfume was overpowering, a cloying scent of vanilla and desperation. She loomed over me, casting a shadow. Sign it, old man, she said. Or do you want us to leave you here to rot? You can't take care of yourself. Look at this place. It's a dump. There is dust everywhere. The roof is probably leaking. You are one bad fall away from dying alone on this floor. She looked around the room with a sneer, judging the life I had built. She didn't see the value of the craftsmanship. She didn't see the memories. She only saw assets to be liquidated. She saw a tear-down property that could fund her lifestyle for another 6 months. Brandon stood up and pulled a folded document from his back pocket. He had come prepared. He must have had this drafted months ago, waiting for the right moment. Here, Brandon said, thrusting a pen at me. Just sign at the bottom. We will take care of everything. We will get the accounts unlocked, we will pay for the wedding, and we will hire a nurse to come look in on you. Maybe we can even find you a nice assisted living facility in town, somewhere with people your own age. Brittany leaned in to whisper to him, but in the quiet of the room, her voice carried perfectly to my ears. Make him sign it now, she hissed. Once the wedding is over, we put him in the state home. We sell this land to that developer from Texas. It's worth at least $2 million for the water rights alone. I heard it. Every syllable. The state home. The water rights. They had already appraised my life and sold it for parts. I took the pen. My hand trembled violently. I held it over the paper. They held their breath. I could feel their hunger. It was a physical thing, a heat radiating from them. They were so close to the finish line. They thought they had won. They thought the old lion had lost his teeth. I dropped the pen. It rolled under the chair. Oops, I said. My fingers. They are so stiff today, Brittany screamed. It was a primal sound of rage. She grabbed a vase from the side table and threw it against the wall. It shattered, sending ceramic shards flying across the room. Pick it up, she yelled at me. Pick it up and sign the damn paper. I looked at the shattered vase. Catherine had made that vase in a pottery class we took together for our 10th anniversary. I slowly looked up at Brittany. I didn't blink. For a fraction of a second, I let the mask slip. I let her see the cold, hard steel in my eyes. I let her see the predator that had eaten companies for breakfast. She froze. She saw it. She stepped back, a flicker of genuine fear crossing her face. What she whispered. But I was already back in character. I slumped forward, clutching my chest. My heart, I wheezed. All this shouting. I need my pills. Brandon grabbed Brittany's arm. Stop it. You're going to give him a heart attack before he signs. We don't have time for this, she yelled, pulling away from him. Dad, where are the pills? Brandon asked, frantic. Kitchen, I gasped. Brandon ran to the kitchen. Brittany stood there, breathing hard, her chest heaving. She looked at me with pure hatred. I hate this place, she spat. I hate your truck. I hate your boots. And I hate you. You are just a stubborn obstacle. I said nothing. I just watched her. I was recording every word in my memory. I was adding every insult to the ledger. The bill was getting very high and payment was due soon. Brandon came back with a glass of water and a bottle of aspirin. I took them with shaking hands. I can't sign today, I whispered. I feel dizzy. I need to lie down. Brandon looked at the paper, then at me. He was torn. He wanted to force my hand, but he was afraid of the body on the floor. Dead men can't sign power of attorney. Fine, he said, grinding his teeth. Fine. Go lie down. But we are coming back tomorrow morning, and you are going to sign. Do you understand? You are going to sign, or we are going to have you declared incompetent. We will drag you to court if we have to. I nodded weakly. Tomorrow. Yes. Tomorrow. They stormed out. The door slammed so hard a picture frame fell off the wall. I listened to the Porsche tear down the driveway again. I waited until the sound of the engine faded into the distance. Then I stood up. I walked over to the mantel and picked up the photo of Catherine. I wiped a speck of dust from the glass. I walked over to the shattered vase. I bent down and picked up a shard of blue ceramic. They had invaded my home. They had threatened my freedom. They had broken my wife's vase. I walked into my study and sat at my desk. I wasn't shaking anymore. My hands were steady as rocks. I picked up the phone and dialed Goldman. They just left, I said. My voice was ice. Did they sign? Goldman asked. No, I said, but they threatened to put me in a state home. They threatened to sell the water rights, and Brittany broke Catherine's blue vase. There was a silence on the line. Goldman knew about the vase. Execute the next phase, I said. Conrad, the audit team is ready, but... Send them, I interrupted. Send them to his office in New York. Send the repo team to the hotel, and Goldman so. I want the sheriff here tomorrow morning. When they come back to force me to sign, I want them arrested for trespassing and elder abuse. Understood. I hung up. I looked at the shard of blue pottery in my hand. You wanted a war son, I whispered to the empty room. You just got one, and you have no idea who you are fighting. The sun had barely cleared the horizon when the black Porsche crawled back up the driveway. It moved slower this time, lacking the aggressive speed of the day before. It looked like a wounded animal limping back to its den. I was sitting on the porch, a blanket draped over my legs, a cup of lukewarm tea in my hands. I had set the stage perfectly. I looked like a man who had aged 10 years in a single night. I watched them get out of the car. They looked terrible. They were wearing the same clothes as yesterday, now wrinkled and stained. Brandon's eyes were bloodshot, rimmed with dark circles that spoke of a sleepless night spent panicking in a cheap motel room. Brittany's hair, usually a helmet of perfect blonde spray, was flat and disheveled. The aesthetic was definitely ruined. They walked up the steps. I didn't get up. I just stared at the horizon, letting my mouth hang open slightly, letting a small tremor work its way into my hand, holding the tea. Dad, Brandon said. His voice was hoarse. Dad, are you awake? I turned my head slowly, as if my neck were a rusted hinge. Brandon, I whispered, is that you? Did you bring the doctor? Brittany let out a huff of impatience that sounded like a tire losing air. We didn't bring a doctor, Conrad, she snapped, stepping around a muddy boot I had left on the porch. We brought the papers, the ones you were too sick to sign yesterday. Remember? Or has your brain completely turned to mush overnight? I looked at her. I blinked rapidly, feigning confusion. Papers, I asked. For the harvest? Brandon groaned. He sat down on the wooden railing, putting his head in his hands. No, Dad. Not the harvest. The power of attorney. The paper that lets me fix the bank accounts so I can pay for the wedding. We talked about this. We screamed about this. Oh, I said softly. The wedding. Yes. The big party. I tried to take a sip of tea. I made sure my hand shook violently. The liquid sloshed over the rim, splashing onto my hand and the blanket. Oops, I mumbled, staring at the stain. Look at that, I made a mess. Brittany recoiled as if the tea were toxic waste. God, he is disgusting, she hissed to Brandon. Look at him. He can't even drink tea without spilling it on himself. He is essentially a toddler, a giant wrinkled toddler. Brandon looked at me with a mixture of pity and annoyance. He didn't offer to help clean it up. He just pulled the document from his jacket pocket. It was crumpled now. Dad, focus, Brandon said, snapping his fingers in front of my face. Look at me. We need to get this done. The bank opens in 30 minutes. I need your signature right here. He thrust the paper onto my lap. I fumbled for my reading glasses in my shirt pocket. I took a long time to put them on. I put them on crooked. I can't read the small letters, son, I said, squinting. The words, they are swimming. It says that you love me and you want me to help you. Brandon lied. His voice was smooth, the voice of a salesman selling a lemon. It says that you trust me to handle the ranch and the money because you are too tired to do it anymore. Too tired, I repeated. Yes, I am very tired. Brittany stepped closer. She loomed over me, blocking out the morning sun. Then sign it and go back to sleep, she said. That is all you have to do. Just scribble your name and you can sleep all day. We will hire someone to come clean up your messes. I looked up at her. Will you stay? I asked, making my voice sound small and pathetic. Will you stay and take care of me? Brittany laughed. It was a cruel, sharp sound that echoed off the mountains. Stay here, she asked, looking around the porch with absolute revulsion. In this shack, Conrad. I wouldn't stay here if you paid me $1 million. This place smells like manure and old people. It is depressing. But where will I go? I asked. Brandon exchanged a look with her. It was the look of conspirators deciding how to dispose of a body. Dad, we found a place, Brandon said. He tried to make his voice sound soothing, but the underlying threat was sharp as a razor. It is in Billings. It is a facility. They have doctors, they have nurses. You will have your own room. A room, I asked. Like a hotel, yeah, Brittany said, checking her nails. Exactly like a hotel, except you can't leave. I gripped the arms of my rocking chair. I don't want to go, I said, my voice rising in panic. I want to stay here. This is my home. Catherine is here. Mom is gone, Dad. Brandon shouted, losing his patience. She is gone and she isn't coming back. And you can't stay here. You are a danger to yourself. Look at you. You are spilling tea. You are forgetting things. What happens when you leave the stove on and burn the whole place down? What happens when you fall and break a hip and no one finds you for 3 days? He leaned in close. I could smell the stale coffee on his breath. We are doing this for your own good, he said. We are saving you. Saving me, I whispered. Yes, Brittany added, and saving the money. Do you have any idea how much it costs to maintain this dump? We can sell this land to the developers by next week. They want to put in condos. Condos, I said. On the grazing land. Who cares about the grazing land? Brittany spat. It is dirt, Conrad. It is just dirt. It is worth more as a parking lot than it is as your little hobby farm. You are sitting on a gold mine, and you are too stupid to dig. She called me stupid. She called my life's work a hobby. I looked down at the paper. I need a pen, I said. Brandon scrambled to find one. He patted his pockets. He pulled out a Mont Blanc pen, a gift I had given him for his graduation. He handed it to me. I held the pen over the paper. My hand was shaking so hard, the tip of the pen was tapping a rhythm against the clipboard. Tap, tap, tap. I can't steady it, I whined. Oh, for God's sake, Brittany yelled. She grabbed my hand. Her fingers were cold and sharp. She dug her nails into my skin. Just hold it still, she screamed. She was physically forcing my hand down to the paper. I pulled back. The pen flew out of my hand and skittered across the porch floor, falling through the slats into the dirt below. Brittany screamed. It was a primal, animalistic sound of pure rage. "You useless old fool," she shrieked. She raised her hand as if to strike me. I flinched, shrinking back into the chair. "Don't hit me," I whimpered. "Please." Brandon grabbed her wrist. "Brittany, stop." "Not here. The neighbors might see." "I don't care," she yelled, fighting against his grip. "Look at him. He is doing it on purpose. He is dragging this out to torture us. He is not doing it on purpose. Look at him. He is senile," Brandon yelled back. "He doesn't know what planet he is on." He turned to me. "Dad, listen to me," he said, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly calm register. "You are going to sign that paper. I am going to go down into the dirt and get that pen, and you are going to sign. Because if you don't, I am going to leave you here. I am going to walk away, and I am going to turn off the power and the water before I go." I stared at him. You would do that? I have to." "Dad," he said, cold as ice, "you are giving me no choice. You are a burden. You have been a burden my whole life, always judging me, always making me feel small. Well, now you are the small one. Now you need me. And if you want to eat, if you want the lights to stay on, you will sign the rights to the company and the ranch over to me. Today." There it was, the truth. It wasn't about the wedding anymore. It was about the resentment he had carried for years because I made him work for his allowance. It was about the power. Brittany smoothed her hair, regaining her composure. "He is right, Conrad," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "You are a relic. You are a peasant pretending to be a king. You don't deserve this money. You don't even know how to spend it. You wear flannel and drive a truck. It is embarrassing. We are doing the world a favor by taking it from you. We will actually use it. We will be something. You are just nothing." She leaned in close, her face inches from mine. "You are a waste of space," she whispered. "And I can't wait to put you in that home and forget you ever existed." I looked at her. I looked at my son, who was climbing down the porch steps to retrieve the pen from the mud. I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. I had what I needed. The camera hidden in the birdhouse above the porch had captured the physical aggression. The microphone taped under the table had captured the threats, the admission of intent to sell the land, the elder abuse. They had laid it all out. Brandon came back up the steps, wiping the mud from the pen with his designer shirt. "Okay, Dad," he said, breathless. "Last chance. Sign." I took the pen. I stopped shaking. I sat up straight. I pushed the blanket off my legs. I stood up. Brandon stepped back, surprised by the sudden movement. "Dad." I looked him in the eye. I didn't blink. The fog in my gaze cleared instantly, replaced by the sharp, predatory glare of the man who had built an empire. "I am not signing, Brandon," I said. My voice was strong. It was deep. It was the voice of the mountain. He froze. "What I said no," I repeated. "And I think you should check your phone." "Check my phone, why?" "Because I said stepping forward, forcing him to retreat a step. About 5 minutes ago, while you were threatening to cut off my water and your wife was assaulting me." The sheriff arrived at the gate. Brittany spun around. "What are you talking about? You are crazy." "Am I asked. I pulled my own phone from my pocket. I tapped the screen. I played back the audio from 10 seconds ago. "You are a waste of space, and I can't wait to put you in that home and forget you ever existed." Brittany's voice, tinny and cruel, echoed from the speaker. Her face went pale. The color drained out of her so fast she looked like a ghost. You. You recorded us, she whispered. Every word I said. Since you drove onto the property yesterday. The camera in the study. The camera on the porch. The audio. I have you threatening to abandon a vulnerable elderly person. I have you physically grabbing me. I have you admitting to fraud regarding the bank accounts. Brandon looked at the phone, then at me. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The old man wasn't senile. The old man was hunting. Dad, he stammered. Dad, wait. It was a joke. We were stressed. Stress is when you have a flat tire, Brandon, I said, advancing on him. This is a conspiracy to commit fraud and elder abuse. I pointed down the driveway. Look. They turned. 2 county sheriff cruisers were coming up the drive, lights flashing silently in the morning dust. Behind them was a black sedan I recognized. Goldman. No, Brittany whimpered. No. You called me a peasant, I said to her. You said I didn't know how to spend my money. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a cigar. I lit it, taking a slow drag. I spent it on the best lawyers in the state, I said, blowing smoke into the air. And I spent it on a forensic audit team that is currently tearing your office in New York apart. Brandon fell to his knees. Dad, please. Get off my porch, I said. The cruisers skidded to a halt. The doors opened. Sheriff Miller stepped out, his hand on his belt. Conrad the sheriff called out. These the trespassers, these are the ones I said. Brittany tried to run for the Porsche, but she tripped in her heels and fell into the dirt, the same dirt she wanted to pave over. I watched them. I watched the panic. I watched the reality set in. The cat had stopped playing with the mouse. The cat had just closed the trap. I watched the black Porsche disappear down the winding gravel road, leaving a trail of dust that hung in the still morning air like a dirty fog. They drove fast, aggressive the way people drive when they think they are escaping a crime scene, or perhaps when they think they have just won a war. They were celebrating in that car. I could almost hear them. Brittany would be fixing her hair in the vanity mirror, complaining about the mud on her shoes, but smiling that predator's smile because she thought she had finally broken the old man. Brandon would be gripping the steering wheel, telling himself that he did what he had to do, that he was the strong one, the decision maker. They were fools. They were children playing with matches in a room full of gasoline, and they had just dropped the lit match on the floor. I stood on the porch for a full minute after the engine noise faded into silence. The birds began to sing again. The wind rustled the leaves of the cottonwood trees. The ranch returned to its natural rhythm, indifferent to the human greed that had just polluted it. Slowly, deliberately, I let the blanket slide from my shoulders to the floor. I stood up. I didn't push myself up with groans of effort. I didn't lean on the railing for support. I stood up with the fluid, powerful motion of a man who still chopped his own firewood every morning. I stretched my back. I felt my spine crack, realigning itself. I rolled my shoulders back. The slump was gone. The hunch was gone. The tremor in my hands, the one that had spilled the tea and dropped the pen, vanished instantly. My hands were steady. They were the hands of a surgeon who was about to perform an amputation. I looked at my reflection in the window glass. The confused, watery eyes of the senile farmer were gone. Staring back at me were the cold, gray eyes of Conrad Sullivan, the man who had shorted the housing market in 2008 and walked away with a fortune while others jumped out of windows. I turned and walked back into the house. I stepped over the shattered remains of Catherine's blue vase. I didn't clean it up. Not yet. I wanted it there. I wanted the reminder. I walked into my study. The air was cool and smelled of old paper and expensive leather. I sat down at my desk, the heavy oak desk that Brandon had once suggested I turn into firewood because it was too bulky. I unlocked my phone. I didn't look at the photos of my grandchildren that I didn't have. I didn't look at the weather report. I went straight to the secure line application. I dialed Goldman. He picked up on the first ring. He always did. Goldman knew that when I called before noon, the world was about to change for someone. "Report," I said. My voice was no longer raspy or weak. It was a low baritone, crisp and commanding. Conrad Goldman said, "The tracking shows they just left your property." "Did they get the signature?" I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. "No," I said. "They got something else. They got confident." "Explain." "They threatened to put me in a state facility, Goldman. They threatened to sell the water rights to the ranch. And they gave me 24 hours to sign over power of attorney, or they would leave me here to starve." There was a silence on the line. A long, heavy silence. Goldman had been my friend for 30 years. He knew what those threats meant. He knew that in my world, a threat was a contract, and contracts had to be honored. "They crossed the line," Goldman said softly. "They didn't just cross it," I replied. "They erased it. They just signed their death warrant, Goldman. Whatever mercy I was holding back, whatever small part of me that remembered teaching Brandon to ride a bike, it is gone. It died on that porch 5 minutes ago." "What are your orders? Increase the pressure," I said. "I want you to double the speed of the forensic audit. I don't just want to know where the money went. I want to know every single law they broke spending it. I want tax evasion. I want wire fraud. I want misuse of corporate funds. If Brandon bought a stick of gum with company money, I want it in a federal indictment." "Understood. The audit team is already in the server room at his office. We have everything." "Good." "And Goldman, yes, Conrad. The wedding is in 48 hours. They think they are going back to New York to fix the bank glitch and have their party. They think they are going to come back here tomorrow and force me to sign." I lit a cigar, the flame illuminating the hard lines of my face. "I want the venue explicitly canceled. Not just unpaid. Canceled. I want the flowers redirected to the children's hospital. I want the catering donated to the homeless shelter. When they land in New York, I want them to realize that they don't have a wedding. They don't have a company. They don't have a home." I exhaled a thick plume of smoke. "And get the jet ready." "You are coming to New York?" Goldman asked, a hint of surprise in his voice. I looked at the shattered vase in the other room. "Yes," I said. "I have a wedding to attend. Or rather, a funeral for their lifestyle. I want to see the look in their eyes when they realize the peasant they mocked owns the sky they are flying in." "Consider it done, Mr. Sullivan." I hung up the phone. The screen went black. I sat there for a moment in the silence of my ranch. The game of cat and mouse was over. The mouse had escaped the trap one last time, thinking it was clever. But the mouse didn't know that I had just locked the doors to the house, and I was coming for them. I sat in my study, the only light coming from the 3 monitors on my desk and the glowing ember of my cigar. Outside, the Montana night was absolute, a blanket of silence that covered the ranch. But inside my headphones, it was mid-morning in Manhattan, and the noise was deafening. I had tapped the security system of the Phoenix startup offices 3 years ago. I told myself it was due diligence, a way to protect my investment. In reality, it was because I never trusted Brandon to run a lemonade stand, let alone a tech company. For years, I had listened to the banal chatter of his office. I heard them playing ping pong when they should have been coding. I heard them ordering sushi on the company card. I heard Brandon bragging to his employees about deals that didn't exist and revenue streams that were pure fiction. Today, the audio feed was different. Today, I was listening to an execution. The Phoenix office was located in a converted loft in Soho. I paid $40,000 a month for that space. It had exposed brick walls, a kombucha tap in the kitchen, and beanbag chairs in the conference room. It was a playground for children pretending to be businessmen. Through the high-fidelity microphones, I heard the elevator ding. It wasn't the usual single chime of a delivery guy or a client. It was a constant rhythmic chiming. Ding, ding, ding. Multiple elevators opening at once. Then came the sound of footsteps. Hard leather-soled shoes on polished concrete. Not the squeak of sneakers. This was the heavy synchronized march of men who billed by the hour and destroyed lives by the minute. I leaned forward, turning up the volume. I heard the receptionist, a young girl named Sarah, who spent most of her time planning her weekends. "Can I help you?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling slightly. "You can't just walk in here. This is a private office." Then I heard the voice of the lead auditor. His name was Mr. Stone. Goldman had handpicked him. Stone was a forensic accountant who had dismantled cartels and corrupt hedge funds. He didn't care about feelings. He cared about ledgers. "We are not guests," Stone said. His voice was calm, projecting easily across the open-plan office. "We are the auditors for the Phoenix Capital Trust. Everyone needs to step away from their computers immediately. Do not touch your keyboards. Do not touch your phones. Place your hands on the desks where we can see them." I heard the sudden chaotic rustle of movement. Chairs scraping back. Murmurs of confusion. The sound of a ping-pong ball dropping to the floor and bouncing away into silence. Tap, tap, tap. Then the storm broke. I heard Brandon's office door fly open. He must have stormed out, probably trying to look authoritative in front of his team. "Excuse me," Brandon shouted. "Who the hell are you?" "Get out of my office, Sarah. Call security." "There is no security." Mr. Sullivan Stone replied. We dismissed them in the lobby. "I am Mr. Stone. I represent the primary shareholder and creditor of this company. We are here to conduct an emergency forensic audit and asset seizure." Asset seizure. Brandon laughed. It was a nervous, high-pitched sound. "You are insane. I am the founder and CEO. I own 51% of the voting stock. You can't seize anything without a court order." "I have a court order," Stone said. The sound of paper being slapped onto a desk echoed through my headphones. "And I have the authorization of the board." "I am the board," Brandon screamed. No, Stone corrected him. "You are the manager. The board is the Sullivan Family Trust, and the trust has voted to remove you effective immediately, pending an investigation into gross embezzlement and misuse of corporate funds." I took a drag of my cigar. The smoke curled around the screen, showing the bank logs. "What embezzlement?" Brandon sputtered. "I built this place. I have investors?" Stone's voice dropped lower, becoming even more dangerous. "Mr. Sullivan, please stop posturing. We know about the wedding flowers billed as office supplies. We know about the lease on the Porsche registered as a company delivery vehicle. We know about the diamonds. We know about the trips to Cabo. That is compensation," Brandon yelled. "It is part of my package." "It is theft," Stone said. "And as of this morning, the credit lines that fueled this company have been revoked. The accounts are empty." I could hear the ripple of panic moving through the room. The employees were whispering. They were realizing that their paychecks due on Friday were likely vapor. Brandon tried a different tactic. He tried to pull rank. He tried to use my name, the name he had spent years trying to distance himself from. "Do you know who my father is?" Brandon demanded. "Conrad Sullivan. He will have your badge. He will sue you into oblivion." "Get him on the phone." I chuckled softly. It was pathetic. He was calling for the monster to save him from the wolves, not realizing the monster had sent them. "Mr. Sullivan is the one who sent us," Stone said. The silence that followed was absolute. It lasted for 10 seconds. I could almost hear Brandon's brain misfiring, trying to process the betrayal. "No," Brandon whispered. "That is a lie. He wouldn't." "He did," Stone said. "Now step away from the desk. We are taking the laptop. That is my personal laptop. It was purchased with company funds, Stone said. It is property of the trust. Hand it over. And the phone. No, Brandon shouted. I heard a scuffle, the sound of a body hitting a desk. Brandon must have tried to grab the computer. Mr. Sullivan, do not make me call the NY, Stone warned. They are waiting downstairs. We are trying to keep this civil for the sake of the employees, but if you obstruct this audit, you will leave here in handcuffs. Give him the phone, Brandon, a female voice said. It sounded like his VP of marketing. Just give it to him. I don't want to go to jail. You are fired, Brandon screamed at her. You are all fired. We quit, the woman said. I'm leaving. I'm not going down for your fraud. I heard the sound of people moving, gathering bags, coats being zipped. The rats were fleeing the sinking ship. They knew. They had probably known for months that the company was a sham. But as long as the free lunches and the paychecks kept coming, they played along. Now that the lights were on, they were scattering. Wait, Brandon yelled. Where are you going? We have the product launch next month. We have the plaza wedding this weekend. You are all invited. Nobody answered him. The sound of the elevator dinging repeatedly filled the air. They were evacuating. Brandon was alone with the auditors. I listened to Stone giving orders to his team. Start imaging the hard drives. Tag everything. Furniture, electronics, art. I want a full inventory by noon. You can't do this. Brandon was sobbing now. His arrogance had dissolved into tears. This is my life. I built this. You built nothing, Stone said coldly. You spent. There is a difference. I heard the sound of drawers being ripped open. I heard the sound of adhesive labels being slapped onto monitors. Mr. Stone, one of the auditors, called out. We found the safe in the back office. It is open. What is inside? Stone asked. Empty, the auditor replied. Just some receipts for a yacht rental, Brandon Stone said. Where is the petty cash fund? The ledger shows $10,000 withdrew yesterday. I needed it, Brandon stammered. For incidentals. You mean for the wedding, Stone said. I didn't have a choice, Brandon cried. My cards were frozen. I had to pay the deposit. So you stole cash from the office safe, Stone summarized. That is larceny, Mr. Sullivan. It is my money. It hasn't been your money for a long time, Stone said. I reached out and turned the volume knob down slightly. The sobbing was getting repetitive. I had heard enough. The Empire of Phoenix was nothing but ash. I looked at the clock on my computer. It was almost noon in New York. Brandon was standing in an empty office surrounded by men cataloging his failure. He had no phone. He had no computer. He had no staff. And he had just realized that his father wasn't a safety net. His father was the ground, and he was falling toward it at terminal velocity. I could imagine him looking out the window at the Manhattan skyline. He probably felt like the city was rejecting him. He probably felt like the victim. He still didn't understand. He thought this was cruelty. He didn't see that it was surgery. I was cutting out the rot before it killed the host. But the surgery wasn't over. I picked up my secure phone. I dialed Goldman. Status, I asked. We have control of the physical premises, Goldman said. Stone says the books are a disaster. It is a Ponzi scheme, Conrad. He was paying old debts with new loans. If you hadn't stepped in, the SEC would have been knocking on his door in 6 months. I saved him from federal prison, I said. He should thank me. He is not thanking anyone right now, Goldman said dryly. He is currently sitting on the floor of the lobby crying. He asked to use an auditor's phone to call his wife. Did you let him? Yes. We thought it would be illuminating for you. I switched the audio feed. I toggled from the room microphone to the tap on the auditor's cell phone that Goldman had set up. I heard the dial tone. Then I heard Brittany answer. She didn't say hello. "Did you fix it?" she demanded. Her voice was tinny and sharp. "I am at the spa and my card was declined for the facial. It was humiliating, Brandon. I had to use my emergency cash." "Did you get the old man to sign?" Brandon sniffed. "Brittany, it's over." "What do you mean it's over?" "Did he die?" "No," Brandon sobbed. He sent a team. They are here. They took the company. They took my laptop. They took everything. They said Dad owns it all." There was a silence on the line. A long, calculating silence. I could hear the gears turning in Brittany's head. She wasn't worried about Brandon. She was assessing the damage to her own position. "They took the company?" she asked, her voice dropping. "So, you have no money?" "I have nothing," Brandon whispered. "The accounts are gone. The wedding fund is gone. Brittany, I think I might be arrested." I waited for her to comfort him. I waited for her to say that they would get through it together, that she loved him, that money didn't matter. "You idiot," Brittany hissed. "You absolute useless idiot. You told me you had it under control. You told me the old man was a pushover. He tricked us." Brandon pleaded. "He is not senile. He is the devil." "I don't care what he is," Brittany screamed. "I care that I am sitting here with half a facial on and no way to pay for it, and the wedding." "What about the wedding? We can't do the plaza," Brandon said. Maybe we can just do something small, she shrieked. "I don't do small. I am an influencer. I have followers. I cannot get married in a courthouse, Brandon. Brittany, please. I need you. I'm scared." I heard a click. Then the dial tone. She had hung up on him. I leaned back in my chair and took a long, slow drag of my cigar. The smoke drifted up toward the ceiling beams. So that was the strength of their love. It couldn't withstand a declined credit card. It crumbled at the first sign of rain. I looked at the monitor. The audio feed from the office was just background noise now. I tapped the screen, switching to a different frequency. This one was connected to a bug I had placed in the penthouse apartment months ago, disguised as a smoke detector. I wanted to hear what Brittany did next. I wanted to hear the sound of a rat looking for a new ship. I didn't have to wait long. I heard the door of the penthouse open. She must have run home from the spa. I heard the sound of heels clicking frantically on the marble floor. I heard zippers. She was packing. Then I heard her dialing a number. "Hey, baby," she said. Her voice was completely different. It was sultry. It was soft. It was the voice she used to use on Brandon before she got the ring. I heard a man's voice on the other end. It was muffled, but I recognized the tone. Arrogant. Wealthy. "Brittany," the man asked. "I thought you were getting married this weekend." "Change of plans," she purred. "It turns out Brandon isn't who I thought he was. He is unstable and broke." I was thinking, "Are you still going to Saint-Tropez next week?" I closed my eyes. It was exactly what I expected, and yet it still stung. My son had thrown away his relationship with his father for a woman who was already booking her next flight before his tears were dry. I opened my eyes. I looked at the photo of Brandon on my desk. He was 5 years old, sitting on a pony, smiling at me. "I am sorry, son," I whispered, "but you need to see this. You need to burn so you can grow back." I picked up my phone. "Goldman," I said. "I'm here. Is the jet fueled?" "Yes. Teterboro Airport. Ready when you are." "Good," I said. "I'm coming to New York. I have a wedding to crash, and I think I need to bring a date." "A date?" Goldman asked. "Yes," I said. "I think I'll bring the sheriff, and maybe a few auditors." I stood up and walked out of the study. I went to the closet and pulled out the tuxedo, the one I hadn't canceled, the one I had saved. I brushed the dust off the shoulders. It was time to suit up. The finale was going to be spectacular. I switched the audio feed from the sobbing ruins of Brandon's office to a different frequency. This one was crisper, quieter. It was the feed from the listening device I had planted inside the smoke detector in the master bedroom of the penthouse. I paid the rent on that apartment. $25,000 a month for a view of Central Park that Brandon was never home to see, and Brittany didn't appreciate. Technically, Brittany wasn't in the penthouse yet. She was currently making a scene at L'Eclat, a spa on Madison Avenue, where a facial cost more than a mortgage payment. I didn't have a camera in the spa, but I didn't need one. I had the transaction logs on my center monitor. Attempted charge $850. Status declined. Attempted charge $850. Status declined. Attempted charge $100. Status declined. She was trying smaller amounts now. She was desperate. I leaned back in my leather chair, imagining the scene. The receptionist, probably a young woman with perfect skin and a polite smile, whispering that there was a problem with the card. Brittany with green goop on her face and a towel wrapped around her head, raising her voice. "Do you know who I am? My husband owns Phoenix." The phone in the penthouse rang. It was the landline. Nobody called the landline unless it was the doorman or an emergency. I listened to the answering machine pick up. "Mrs. Sullivan, this is the manager at L'Eclat. We have a situation. You left the premises without settling your bill. We understand there might be a bank error, but we need you to return immediately or we will have to file a theft of services report with the NYPD. We have your driver's license on file." I smiled. She had run. She had actually run out of the spa like a teenager dining and dashing at a diner. 10 minutes later, the front door of the penthouse slammed open. The audio spike made me wince. I switched to the living room bug. She was alone, but she was making enough noise for a regiment. I heard her heels clacking violently on the marble floors. She was breathing hard, short, panicked gasps. She was pacing, back and forth, back and forth. I heard the sound of a zipper. She was opening her purse. Then the sound of objects being thrown onto a glass table. Keys, phone, and a handful of plastic cards. "Work," she screamed at the empty room. "Just work, you stupid pieces of plastic." I heard her tapping on her phone. She was likely checking her banking app. I could have told her what she would find. Zero. Or rather, a negative balance since I had called in the personal loan. I floated them for the furniture last year. She let out a guttural scream of frustration. It was the sound of a woman who had built her entire identity on a foundation of other people's money, suddenly realizing she was standing in quicksand. Then the silence returned. But it was a busy silence. I heard the rustle of fabric. I heard the distinct sound of a suitcase being dragged from a closet. She wasn't waiting for Brandon. She wasn't planning to stand by her man while his empire burned. She was evacuating. I heard drawers being ripped open. She was packing jewelry. I hoped she kept the receipts because the Cartier bracelet she was likely shoving into her bon was about to be reported as stolen property by the Phoenix liquidation team. Then she stopped. I heard her pick up her phone again. She dialed a number. I checked the call log on my screen. It wasn't Brandon. It wasn't her mother. It was a number with a Miami area code. I turned up the volume. "Pick up," she whispered. "Pick up, pick up, pick up." The line connected. "Hello," a man's voice. Deep, bored, background noise of wind and maybe a boat engine. "Julian, it's me. Brittany." Her voice had changed completely. Gone was the shrill, demanding harpy who had screamed at me on my porch. In its place was a purring, seductive kitten. It was a voice designed to manipulate. "Brittany," the man said, "I thought you were getting married this weekend. I was just looking at your Instagram." "The plaza, right?" Brittany laughed. It was a brittle, fake sound. "Oh, that," she said. "Yeah, about that. Listen, Julian, I made a mistake. A huge mistake. Brandon, he isn't who I thought he was." "What do you mean he is unstable, Julian? He is having some kind of mental breakdown. He lied to me. He told me he owned his company, but it turns out he is just an employee. And his father is this psycho farmer from Montana who controls everything. It is a nightmare. I don't feel safe." I took a puff of my cigar. Psycho farmer. I liked that. It had a ring to it. "So what are you saying?" the man asked. "Is the wedding off? The wedding is a disaster waiting to happen," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I can't marry him, Julian. I can't tie myself to a loser who is about to be indicted for fraud." "Yes, fraud. The auditors are raiding his office right now. I barely got out." She was lying effortlessly. She was painting herself as the victim, the damsel in distress escaping a criminal mastermind. "I was thinking about you," she continued. "I was thinking about that offer you made me last summer. You know about Saint-Tropez." Julian chuckled. It was a wet, unpleasant sound. "Saint-Tropez is nice this time of year. But Brittany, you are expensive. I am worth it," she said. "You know I am. And besides, I have assets. I have jewelry. I have information." "Information about Phoenix," she said. "I know where Brandon keeps his client lists. I know his passwords. I know things that your competitors would kill for. If I leave him, I can bring that with me. A little dowry." I froze. My hand tightened around the cigar. She wasn't just a gold digger. She was a corporate spy. She was offering to sell my son's intellectual property, my property, to a competitor in exchange for a plane ticket and a seat on a yacht. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a felony. Julian was silent for a moment. "Client lists. You say full database," she promised. "I have his backup hard drive in my bag right now." I didn't, of course. She was bluffing. Or maybe she had stolen it earlier. Either way, she was confessing to industrial espionage on a recorded line. "Okay," Julian said. "You have my attention. Get to the airport. I'll have the jet pick you up at Teterboro. But Brittany." "Yes, baby. Don't bring any baggage. Just the hard drive. And maybe that red dress I like." "I will be there in an hour," she said. "I just need to grab a few things." "You are saving my life, Julian. Brandon he is drowning, and I don't want to get wet." She hung up. I sat there in the darkness of my study staring at the audio waveform on the screen. It was a jagged line of green light that represented the absolute moral bankruptcy of the woman my son wanted to spend his life with. She was leaving him. She was stealing from him. And she was doing it while he was currently weeping on the floor of his office, terrified of losing her. I felt a strange mixture of anger and vindication. I had always known she was a viper. I just didn't know her fangs were this long. She was packing again, moving faster now. I heard the sound of shoes being thrown into a trunk. I looked at the clock. She said she would be at Teterboro in an hour. Teterboro was where my jet was waiting. I picked up the phone and dialed Goldman. "Change of plans," I said. "Conrad." "What is it Brittany is running?" I said. "She just called a competitor. She is stealing corporate data and fleeing to Miami to meet a man named Julian." I heard Goldman typing furiously. "Julian." "Julian Vance, the hedge fund manager." "That sounds right. She is heading to Teterboro." "Do you want me to call the police?" Goldman asked. "We can have her stopped for corporate theft." "No," I said. Let her go, Conrad, if she has client data." "She doesn't have anything valuable," I said. "Phoenix is a shell. The client list is worthless because the product doesn't work." "Let her take it. Let her sell a bag of air to Julian Vance. It will serve him right. Then what do you want to do? She is going to Teterboro, I repeated. My jet is at Teterboro. Yes. Call the pilot, I said. Tell him he has a new passenger. Tell him to pick up a woman in a red dress carrying a stolen hard drive. You want to fly her to Miami? I said, a cold smile spreading across my face. I want to fly her to the wedding. But the wedding is canceled. Not the location, I said. The plaza is canceled. But I have a new venue in mind. A very special venue. I looked at the map on my screen. I traced the flight path. Have the pilot tell her there is a change of flight plan due to weather. Tell her Julian sent the plane. She won't know the difference. She has never been on a private jet that she didn't have to beg for. And where are we taking her, Conrad? Take her to the ranch, I said. The ranch, yes. I want her here. I want Brandon here. I want them both in the dirt where they belong. I want the final act to happen on my stage. But she thinks she is going to Saint-Tropez. Exactly, I said. Imagine her surprise when she steps off the plane expecting the French Riviera and finds a manure pile in Montana. Goldman laughed. It was a rare, dry sound. You are a cruel man, Conrad. I am a father, I said, and I am teaching a lesson. Make the call. I hung up. I listened to Brittany zipping up her suitcase. She was humming. She was actually humming. She thought she had pulled off the heist of the century. She thought she was trading up. She had no idea she was about to be airdropped into a war zone. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked out at the vast, empty sky of Montana. Come on home, Brittany, I whispered. We have so much to talk about. I watched on the monitor as Brandon burst through the double doors of the penthouse. He looked like a man who had just swam through a sewer. His designer suit was soaked with sweat. His tie was undone and his eyes were wide with the manic energy of a cornered rat. He had run all the way from Soho. He had no money for a taxi and his Uber account was suspended. He had run 40 blocks in Italian leather shoes to get to the only sanctuary he had left. But there was no sanctuary. There was only a war zone. The living room looked like it had been hit by a mortar shell. Brittany wasn't packing anymore. She was destroying. She stood in the center of the room holding a golf club, my golf club, a vintage driver I had left there years ago. She swung it with terrifying precision. Smash! The 70-inch television screen exploded in a shower of sparks and glass. Smash! A glass sculpture on the pedestal, a piece of modern art Brandon had bought for $12,000 of company money, disintegrated into dust. Brandon froze in the doorway, chest heaving. Brittany, he wheezed. Brittany, what are you doing? She spun around. Her hair was wild, plastered to her forehead. Her makeup was streaked with tears and rage. She didn't look like a blushing bride. She looked like a banshee. What am I doing? She screamed, hefting the club. I am redecorating. Since we can't pay the rent, I figured I would get our security deposits worth. She swung again, taking out a lamp. Stop! Brandon yelled, rushing forward to grab the club. Are you crazy? We have to fix this. Fix it! She laughed, a shrill, hysterical sound. There is nothing to fix, Brandon. It is over. Your father locked the accounts. The spa kicked me out. I had to run away like a thief. Do you know how humiliating that is? I lost the company, Brandon shouted back, wrestling the club from her grip and throwing it onto the sofa. The auditors came. They took my laptop. They took my phone. I have nothing. They kicked me out on the street. He collapsed onto the white leather ottoman, burying his face in his hands. They know everything, Brittany, he sobbed. The embezzlement. The fraud. They have the logs. They know about the diamonds. They know about the lease. Dad sent a forensic team. He is going to send me to jail. Brittany stared at him. Her chest was heaving. The rage in her eyes cooled into something sharper, something colder. Disgust. So you are useless, she said. You are actually useless. I married you because you were supposed to be the golden boy. You were supposed to be the ticket. And you are just a broke daddy's boy fraud. She walked over to the table where her suitcase was open. I am leaving, she said. No. Brandon scrambled up, grabbing her arm. You can't leave. We are getting married in 2 days. There is no wedding, she shrieked, pulling away. How are we going to pay for it? With what money? The plaza will lock the doors. We can figure it out, Brandon pleaded. Listen to me. The guests. Think about the guests. What about them? They are rich, Brittany. All of them. Your friends from the Hamptons. My investors. They are coming to give us gifts. Cash gifts. She stopped. Her hand hovered over a silk blouse she was about to stuff into the bag. Brandon saw the hesitation. He pressed his advantage. Think about it, he said, his voice gaining a feverish intensity. We have 200 guests coming. The minimum gift etiquette for a wedding like this is $500. Most of them will give thousands. Uncle Jerry? He always gives 10 grand. The venture guys, they give stock or cash. He grabbed her shoulders, looking into her eyes. We could walk away with $100,000 in cash envelopes, Brittany. Maybe more. We just have to get through the ceremony. We just have to say the vows, cut the cake, and collect the box. I watched them on the screen. It was grotesque. They weren't talking about love. They weren't talking about commitment. They were planning a heist. They were calculating the return on investment of their own nuptials. 100,000, Brittany whispered. Her eyes narrowed. Easily, Brandon said. We get the cash. We pay off the immediate threats. And then we run. We take the honeymoon flight, and we don't come back. We go somewhere cheap. Bali, Thailand. We start over. Brittany looked at the suitcase. Then she looked at the shattered TV. Then she looked at Brandon. She was doing the math. She was weighing the risk of running now with nothing against the potential payout of faking it for 48 hours. What about the venue, she asked. If we don't pay the balance tomorrow, they cancel. I will talk to Dad, Brandon lied. He was desperate. He would say anything to keep her. I will beg him. I will tell him I signed the papers. I will tell him anything. I will get him to release just enough to open the doors. He won't let us be humiliated in front of New York society. He cares too much about the family name. He was wrong. I didn't care about the name. I cared about the truth. But Brittany didn't know that. She looked at him, and for the first time I saw a flicker of the old dynamic. She was the shark, and he was the chum. You better be right, she hissed. You better fix this, Brandon. Because if I put on that dress and walk down that aisle and there is no reception, I will kill you myself. I will. Brandon promised. I will fix it. Just put the clothes back. Please, we are a team. Brittany looked at the golf club on the couch. Fine, she said. 2 days. We get the cash. And then we leave this miserable city. She kicked the suitcase shut. But you are sleeping on the couch, she spat. You smell like failure. I leaned back in my chair in Montana, the cigar smoke swirling around me. They had taken the bait. They were going to stay. They were going to walk into the trap, willingly blinded by the promise of one last payday. They thought the wedding was their lifeboat. They didn't realize it was the anchor. I picked up my phone. Goldman, I said. Yes, Conrad. They are staying. They think they are going to harvest the guests for cash and run. Predictable, Goldman said. Let them believe it, I said. Do not cancel the venue publicly yet. Let them think the doors are open. Let them put on their tuxedos and their gowns. Let them gather their rich friends. And then I said, smiling into the darkness, when they are standing at the altar, waiting for their payday. We turn off the lights. I looked at the monitor one last time. Brandon was sweeping up the glass from the broken sculpture. Brittany was pouring herself a glass of wine from a bottle that likely cost $300. "Enjoy the wine," I whispered. "It is the last expensive thing you will taste for a very long time." The silence on the ranch was absolute, a sharp contrast to the chaos I knew was currently erupting 2,000 miles away in Manhattan. It was 10 in the morning on Friday. The sun was high over the Montana peaks, bathing my porch in a deceptive warmth. I sat in my rocking chair, a mug of black coffee in my hand, watching a hawk circle a field mouse in the distance. We were both hunters, that hawk and I. We both knew the value of patience. I checked my watch. The deadline for the final payment to the Plaza Hotel had passed exactly 2 minutes ago. The wire transfer I had scheduled to cancel the one Brandon was banking his entire social existence on had officially failed. I didn't have to wait long. My phone began to vibrate on the small wooden table beside me. It wasn't a ringtone. It was the sound of a lifeline being severed. It was Brandon. I let it ring 3 times. I took a slow sip of coffee. I wanted him to sweat. I wanted him to stare at the phone screen, praying that the father he had discarded would pick up and save him. On the 4th ring, I answered. "Hello," I said. My voice was calm, detached, the voice of a man who had already moved on. "Dad," Brandon screamed. His voice was a high-pitched frequency of pure terror. It wasn't the voice of a CEO. It wasn't the voice of a man. It was the voice of a child who had lost his mother in a crowd. "Dad, you have to help me, please. I am begging you." I leaned back in the chair. "What is it, Brandon?" I asked. "I am busy. I have fences to mend." "The plaza," he shrieked. "They just called. The manager. He said the payment bounced. He said the account is locked. Dad, they canceled the wedding. They canceled it. They are locking the ballroom doors. They are taking down the flowers." I closed my eyes, savoring the image. I could see the staff at the plaza, efficient and ruthless, rolling up the carpets and putting away the crystal. "That is unfortunate," I said. "Unfortunate," Brandon yelled. He was hyperventilating. "Dad, the guests are flying in. The investors are coming." "Brittany." "Oh God. Brittany is going to kill me. She is in the other room trying to put on her dress she doesn't know yet. If I tell her the venue is gone, she will leave me. She will actually leave me." I stayed silent. I let his panic fill the empty space on the line. "Dad, fix it. You have money. I know you have money. Wire them $1 million. Wire them anything. Just get the doors open." "I cannot do that, son," I said slowly. "Why? Why are you doing this to me? I am not doing anything." I lied smoothly. "You and your wife called the sheriff on me yesterday. You tried to have me committed. My lawyers have advised me to freeze all activity until the investigation is complete. My hands are tied." "No." Brandon sobbed. "No, no, no. Dad, forget the lawyers. Forget everything. I am sorry. I am so sorry. Just pay the hotel. I will sign anything you want later. Just save me." He was bargaining with chips he didn't have. He was promising things he couldn't deliver. "I don't have access, Brandon," I said. "Goldman locked it all down. It will take weeks to unravel." There was a sound of glass breaking on his end of the line. He must have thrown something. "Then what do I do?" he whispered. "What do I do? I have 200 people coming to a wedding that doesn't exist." I took a puff of my cigar. This was the moment. This was the needle threading the eye. "Well," I said, my tone shifting, becoming thoughtful, almost helpful. "If you really want to get married, if it is really about the love and not the party—" "It is about the party," Brandon snapped. "But we have to have something. We have to have a place. I hesitated, letting the tension build. I might know a place, I said. A place, the Plaza, the Ritz. It is not a hotel, but it is available. And I know the owner. I think I can call in a favor and get you the space for free. Free? Brandon asked. Hope, pathetic and desperate, crept back into his voice. Where is it? Is it a loft? A warehouse, industrial chic, is very in right now. It is. Rustic, I said. Very authentic. Rustic. Like a barn. Barn weddings are okay. Brittany might go for a rustic upscale vibe. Where is it, upstate? It is in Queens, I said. Queens. Brandon sounded horrified, but then desperation took over. Okay. Queens. Fine. We can spin it. We can say it is an edgy outer borough experience. What is the name of the venue? It is called Rusty's, I said. Rusty's. That sounds… Is it a speakeasy? Something like that, I said. It is an old establishment. Very private. I can make a call. I can get the keys. It is empty right now. You can bring your own catering. You can bring the flowers. You just need to redirect the guests. Brandon was breathing hard. I could hear his brain working, trying to construct a lie that would sell this to Brittany. Okay, he said. Okay. We can do this. We can say the plaza had a gas leak. Yes, a gas leak. We had to move the venue last minute to an exclusive underground location. Rusty's. It sounds exclusive. Dad, call the guy. Get us in. I will make the call, I said. But Brandon, yes. You are on your own for the setup. I am just getting you the door. You have to walk through it. I will. I will do anything. Just get me the address. I gave him the address. It was an address I knew by heart, but not because it was an exclusive venue. Thank you. Dad, Brandon breathed. Thank you. You saved my life. He hung up. I sat there staring at the phone. He had thanked me. He had thanked me for handing him an anvil while he was drowning. I dialed Goldman. The venue is set, I said. Conrad, Goldman said, sounding weary. You aren't really sending them to Rusty's, I am. That place has been condemned for 3 years. It was a biker bar before the health department shut it down for a rat infestation. I know, I said. I own the deed. I bought it to tear it down and build a warehouse, but I never got around to it. It has no electricity, Conrad. It has no running water. The roof leaks. It is perfect, I said. But the guests, Goldman started. The guests are vultures, I interrupted. They are coming for the free champagne and the networking. They deserve to see exactly what kind of man Brandon is without my checkbook. Did you unlock the doors? I sent a property manager over there an hour ago to cut the padlock, I said. The key is under the mat. Goldman sighed. You are writing a tragedy, Conrad. No, I said, standing up. I am writing a comedy, and the punchline is landing tomorrow. I walked into the house and went to my closet. I packed my bag, my tuxedo, my dress shoes, a flask of very expensive scotch. I walked out to the truck and drove to the airfield. The jet was waiting, a sleek silver bird that would carry me to the scene of the crime. As I flew over the country watching the patchwork of fields turn into the gray sprawl of the city, I thought about Brandon. Right now, he was lying to his wife. He was telling her about the gas leak at the plaza. He was selling her on the exclusive, edgy vibe of Rusty's. He was loading boxes of expensive flowers into a rented van because he couldn't afford a delivery service. He was fighting for his life. And tomorrow, when he opened the doors to Rusty's and the smell of stale beer and mildew hit him, when he saw the peeling paint and the water stains, when Brittany saw the roach motels in the corner, he would look for me, and I would be there. I landed at Teterboro as the sun was setting. The air in New York was thick and humid. I took a car into the city. I checked into a hotel, not the plaza, but somewhere quiet, somewhere discreet. I didn't sleep well. I was too energized. I spent the night looking out at the city lights, knowing that somewhere out there in a dark corner of Queens, my son was trying to turn a pumpkin into a carriage with nothing but desperation and lies. The next morning, the day of the wedding, I dressed slowly. I put on the cufflinks Catherine gave me on our wedding day. I tied my bow tie with precision. I looked in the mirror. I didn't look like a farmer. I looked like a titan. I checked my phone. One message from the property manager at Rusty's. They are here. The bride is screaming. They are trying to cover the graffiti with hydrangeas. It isn't working. I laughed. I walked out of the hotel and signaled for my driver. Take me to Queens, I said. The driver looked at my tuxedo. You have a party in Queens, sir? The party of the century, I replied. As we drove across the bridge, leaving the gleaming towers of Manhattan behind, I felt a sense of finality. This was it. The cord was cut. The bridge was burned. We pulled up to the address. It was a desolate street lined with auto body shops and fenced-off lots. And there, in the middle of the grime, was Rusty's. A squat brick building with barred windows and a sign that was missing half its letters. Parked in front were a dozen luxury cars, Bentleys, Mercedes. The guests had arrived. They were standing on the cracked sidewalk, clutching their designer purses, looking terrified. They looked like penguins stranded in a desert. I saw Brandon running out the front door. He was sweating through his tuxedo. He was waving his arms, trying to herd the guests inside. Please come in, he was shouting. It is an immersive experience, it is irony. Then he saw me. He saw the black town car pull up. He saw the window roll down. He froze. I looked at him. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just looked. And then I opened the door and stepped out into the wreckage of his life. I stepped onto the sidewalk, the soles of my shoes crunching on a mixture of broken glass and urban grit. The heat in Queens was oppressive, a physical weight that pressed down on the lungs, smelling of asphalt exhaust, and the distinct sour odor of rotting garbage from the overflowing dumpsters in the alleyway next to Rusty's. It was a smell that no amount of imported hydrangeas could mask. I adjusted my cufflinks and looked at the crowd. It was a sea of black tie and couture gowns, a flock of peacocks stranded in a landfill. These were the people Brandon and Brittany had spent years trying to impress. Venture capitalists trust fund kids, minor celebrities with major egos. They were huddled together near the entrance, trying to avoid touching the rusty chain-link fence that separated the venue from a scrap metal yard. Brandon rushed toward me. He looked like he was vibrating. His face was slick with sweat, his hair plastered to his forehead. Dad! He hissed, his voice a frantic whisper. You came. Did you bring the check? Did you bring the money? We need to pay a catering truck. I found a taco truck down the street, but they want cash up front. I looked at him. I looked at the desperation in his eyes. Hello, Brandon, I said calmly. I brought myself, and I brought an appetite. I hope the tacos are good. Brandon stared at me, his mouth opening and closing. He realized in that second that I wasn't there to save him. I was there to watch the show. He didn't have time to argue. A woman in a silver sequined dress, presumably one of Brittany's bridesmaids, screamed, Ew! Oh my God! Ew! Something just ran over my foot. It was likely a rat. Rusty's was famous for them. Brandon spun around. It was a cat, he shouted, lying effortlessly. It is a bodega cat. It is part of the charm. Everyone please come inside. The ambiance is better inside. He began to herd the guests toward the dark, gaping maw of the front door. They moved reluctantly, like cattle engaging in a collective suicide pact. I followed them. I walked with my head high, unbothered by the grime. I had worked on a ranch my whole life. I knew what dirt was. These people treated dirt like a contagion. The interior of Rusty's was a masterclass in neglect. The windows were boarded up, allowing only thin slivers of dusty light to pierce the gloom. The air was stagnant and hot, trapped by years of grease and smoke. The floor was sticky. Every step made a sucking sound. Schlock, schlock, schlock. Brandon had tried. I had to give him that. He had draped white sheets over the old pool tables. He had placed vases of wilting white roses on the bar, which was still sticky with the residue of spilled beer from 3 years ago. He had even tried to cover the graffiti on the back wall, a particularly vulgar illustration, with a white trellis zip-tied to a pipe. But you cannot hide a corpse with a doily. At the far end of the room, standing on a makeshift riser made of shipping pallets, was Brittany. I stopped. I drank in the sight. This was the woman who had demanded a royal aesthetic. This was the woman who had called me a peasant. She was wearing a Vera Wang custom gown that must have cost $20,000. It had a train that went on for 6 feet, and that train was currently dragging through a puddle of dark, viscous motor oil that had leaked from the ceiling. The hem of the dress was black. The lace was ruined. She looked like a swan that had crash-landed in an oil spill. She wasn't crying. She was past crying. She was in a state of catatonic shock. Her eyes were wide, staring at the door as the guests filed in, her face a mask of frozen horror. She was holding a bouquet of flowers so tightly, her knuckles were white. Beside her stood her mother, Veronica. Veronica was fanning herself with a paper plate, looking as if she had just smelled raw sewage, which, given the plumbing situation at Rusty's, she probably had. I moved to the side of the room, leaning against a pillar that didn't look structurally sound. I wanted a good view. The guests began to murmur. The murmur grew into a buzz, and the buzz grew into a roar of discontent. "There are no chairs," a man in a tuxedo complained loudly. "Where do we sit?" "Is there air conditioning?" a woman asked, dabbing her forehead with a silk handkerchief. "I am melting. This is inhumane." Brandon ran to the center of the room. He clapped his hands. The sound was pathetic in the cavernous space. "Welcome," he shouted, his voice cracking. "Welcome, everyone, to the underground experience. We wanted to do something different. We wanted to strip away the artifice of the plaza and give you something raw, something real. A voice shouted from the back. "It smells like a urinal in here." Laughter. Cruel, sharp laughter. "Please," Brandon begged. "The ceremony will be short. We are just waiting for the officiant." He looked at me. He was pleading with his eyes. He wanted me to do something. He wanted me to take control. I just took a cigar from my pocket. I didn't light it. I just held it, watching him. Suddenly, Brittany snapped. The catatonia broke. The rage took over. She stepped off the pallet. Her heel caught in the gap between the wood slats. She stumbled, ripping the delicate fabric of her dress. A loud "rape" echoed through the silent room. "No," she screamed. She yanked her foot free, leaving the shoe wedged in the pallet. She stood there, one shoe on, one shoe off, unbalanced and unhinged. "Brandon," she shrieked, "fix this. Get them drinks. Get them something. They are staring at me. I don't have the drinks yet." Brandon stammered. The truck is late." "There is no truck," she yelled. "You promised me champagne. You promised me a string quartet. Where is the quartet?" There was no quartet. There was a Bluetooth speaker sitting on the bar, playing a Spotify playlist that was buffering due to the bad signal in the metal building. The crowd was turning. I could feel it. The initial confusion was hardening into anger. These were people who valued their time and their comfort above all else. They had been dragged to Queens in a heat wave for a wedding that looked like a crime scene. "This is a joke," said Julian Vance. I turned. There he was. The man Brittany had called. The man she tried to run to. He was standing near the door wearing a white linen suit that was glowing in the gloom. He looked bored. He looked disgusted. Julian Brittany cried out, spotting him. She limped toward him, dragging her oil-stained train. "Julian, you came. You have to help me, get me out of here." Julian looked at her. He looked at the dress. He looked at the oil stain. He looked at the sweat dripping down her face. He didn't see a prize anymore. He saw a liability. "I came for the hard drive," Brittany Julian said coldly. "You said you had the client list. I do, I have it. It is in my bag." "Just take me to the jet," Brandon stepped in front of her. "What?" he asked. "What jet, Brittany? Who is this guy?" "Out of my way, loser!" Brittany spat at him. She pushed Brandon. He stumbled back, crashing into a table. The vase of flowers fell over, spilling water onto the floor. Julian laughed. It was a cruel sound. "She called me yesterday, Brandon," Julian said, enjoying the moment. "She offered to sell me your company data in exchange for a ride to Miami. She was leaving you before you even got to the altar." The room went silent. The guests gasped. This was better than a wedding. This was a public execution. Brandon looked at Brittany. He looked like a dog that had been kicked by its master. You were going to sell me out," he whispered. "After everything I did, after I built this experience for you, she screamed, gesturing around the rotting room. "This isn't an experience. This is a dump. You are a fraud. Brandon, you have no money. You have no company. You are nothing. And your father is a psycho who locked us out," she pointed at me. "Him," she yelled. "It is all his fault. He has millions. He could have paid for the plaza. He did this to humiliate us." All eyes turned to me. I pushed off the pillar. I walked into the center of the room. The crowd parted for me. I didn't look like a psycho farmer. I looked like the only person in the room who knew exactly what was happening. I stopped in front of them. Brandon on the floor in a puddle of flower water. Brittany one-shoed and manic. Julian smirking in his white suit. "I am Conrad Sullivan," I said. My voice filled the room without shouting. "And she is right. I did do this." I looked at the guests. "I did this because my son is a thief," I said. Murmurs. Shock. Phones were out. Everyone was recording. "He embezzled $4 million from my trust fund to buy your friendship." I continued looking around the room. The dinners. The trips. The gifts, stolen money. I looked at Brandon. "And I did this because his fiancée is a corporate spy who tried to sell that stolen property to a competitor." I looked at Julian. "And you, Mr. Vance, you are trespassing on my property, and you are soliciting stolen goods." Julian's smirk vanished. "Your property?" he asked. "I bought this building 5 years ago," I said. "And I believe the police are very interested in the hard drive Brittany is carrying." The sound of sirens cut through the air. Not in the distance. Close, right outside. Blue and red lights flashed through the boarded-up windows, strobing across the faces of the terrified guests. I checked my watch. "Right on time," I said. The front doors burst open. But it wasn't the caterer. It was the NYPD. And behind them, a team of men in suits with federal badges. "Nobody move!" a voice shouted. "This is a federal raid," panic erupted. The guests screamed. The socialites scrambled, trying to hide their faces from the cameras. Brandon looked at me. He looked at the police. He looked at the ruins of his wedding. "Dad," he whispered. I looked down at him. "I told you I was bringing a date," I said. I turned and walked toward the door, lighting my cigar as I went. The smoke mingled with the dust and the despair. The wedding was over. The funeral had begun. The sound started as a low vibration in the soles of my shoes, shaking the loose gravel of the parking lot, before exploding into a deafening roar that drowned out the sirens and the screaming. The sky above Queens, usually a haze of gray smog, was suddenly torn apart by the sleek black silhouette of a Bell 429 helicopter. It banked sharply over the scrapyard, its rotors churning the humid air into a violent hurricane. Inside Rusty's, the vibration knocked the cheap vases off the bar. The guests, already terrified by the police raid, covered their ears and huddled against the peeling walls. I walked out through the double doors, stepping into the chaotic wind tunnel of the landing zone. The downwash hit the makeshift wedding venue like a physical blow. The white sheets Brandon had draped over the picnic tables outside were ripped away, tumbling like surrender flags across the dirty asphalt. The paper napkins, the plastic cups, the fake flower petals. Everything was swept up into a vortex of debris, stripping away the last pathetic layer of the illusion Brandon had tried to build. The helicopter touched down right in the center of the lot, crushing a bed of weeds. It didn't look like a rescue vehicle. It looked like a weapon. The door slid open before the rotors even slowed. I stood there, my tuxedo jacket whipping in the wind, watching my cavalry arrive. But these weren't soldiers. They were far more dangerous. Goldman stepped out first, clutching a leather briefcase to his chest. Behind him came three men in dark suits, their expressions unreadable, their eyes hidden behind aviator sunglasses. These were not the local police. These were the forensic auditors from the Department of Justice and the federal prosecutors I had spent the last 24 hours coordinating with. The police officers who had secured the perimeter stepped back respectfully. They knew rank when they saw it. Brandon and Brittany stumbled out of the warehouse, pushed forward by the officers clearing the building. They looked like refugees from a disaster zone. Brittany's dress was ruined, the oil stain now covered in dust, her hair a bird's nest of tangles. Brandon was missing a shoe. They stopped when they saw the helicopter. They saw me standing next to the men in suits. They saw Goldman hand me a thick file. The silence that followed the shutdown of the engine was heavy, suffocating. It was the silence of a guillotine blade hanging at the top of its arc. I walked toward them. The gravel crunched loudly under my feet. The guests filtered out behind them, watching in morbid fascination, their phones recording every second of the downfall. I didn't yell. I didn't need to. The wind had stopped, but the storm was right here in my hand. This, I said, holding up the file, is the end of the road. Brandon shook his head, tears streaming down his face, mixing with the grime. Dad, please. Who are these people? These are the people who clean up messes, I said. This is the federal indictment for wire fraud, bank fraud, and embezzlement. I tossed the file onto the hood of a police cruiser. It landed with a heavy thud. Goldman stepped forward. His voice was dry, professional, devoid of any pity. Mr. Sullivan, Mrs. Sullivan, the assets of Phoenix have been seized. The personal accounts have been liquidated to pay creditors. The lease on the penthouse is voided. You are currently trespassing on private property, and you are in possession of stolen corporate data. Brittany let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. She looked at Julian Vance, who was currently being handcuffed by an officer near his Bentley. Her escape route was closed. Her golden parachute had failed to open. You can't do this, she whispered. We are famous. You are infamous, I corrected her. I signaled to the federal agents. They moved in. It wasn't dramatic. It was efficient. They took Brandon's arms. They pulled them behind his back. The click of the handcuffs was the loudest sound in the world. Dad, Brandon screamed as they turned him around. Dad. Look at me. I am your son. You can't let them take me. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had tried to put me in a home. I looked at the man who had threatened to destroy my ranch. I don't have a son, I said. My son died the day he decided his father was just a bank account. They marched him toward the waiting SUV. He fought them, kicking and screaming, stripping away whatever dignity he had left. Brittany didn't fight. She went limp. As the female officer handcuffed her, she looked at me. Her eyes were dead. The ambition was gone, replaced by the terrifying realization of a future spent in a cell. "Nice tuxedo, Conrad," she mumbled as they led her away. "Thank you," I said. "It cost $5,000. I watched them go. I watched the police cars flash their lights and roll out of the lot, taking the garbage with them. The guests began to scatter, running for their cars, desperate to distance themselves from the blast radius. Goldman stood beside me. "It is done," he said. "Yes," I said. "It is done." I looked at the helicopter. The pilot was waiting. "Ready to go home, sir?" the pilot asked. I looked at the ruins of Rusty's. I looked at the Queen's skyline. "Yes," I said. "Take me to Montana. I have apple trees to prune." I climbed into the helicopter. I didn't look back. As we lifted off, rising above the grit and the noise, I felt a profound sense of peace. The aesthetic was restored. The ledger was balanced. And I was finally truly free. I stepped onto the stack of shipping pallets that served as the altar. The wood creaked under my weight, a dry, snapping sound that echoed in the silence of the warehouse. I looked out at the sea of faces. The socialites, the investors, the friends who were only friends when the champagne was flowing. They were staring at me with a mixture of terror and hunger. They knew the wedding was dead. They were just waiting to see where the bodies would be buried. I adjusted the microphone stand. It was a cheap plastic thing taped together with duct tape. I tapped the mic. Thump, thump. The sound boomed through the Bluetooth speaker on the bar, distorted and harsh. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said. My voice was calm, the voice of a man reading a quarterly earnings report that would bankrupt a competitor. "I apologize for the change in venue. My son promised you the plaza. He promised you a royal aesthetic. Instead, he gave you this, a condemned building filled with rat poison and lies." I looked down at Brandon. He was standing near a puddle of oil held in place by 2 federal agents. He was shaking. He looked small. He looked like a child who had broken a vase and was waiting for the belt. "But do not blame the venue," I continued. "This building is honest. It is exactly what it appears to be, a ruin. My son, however, is not." I held up the thick file Goldman had given me. "You all know Brandon as a tech visionary," I said. "You know him as the CEO of Phoenix. You know him as a self-made man who drives a Porsche and lives in a penthouse overlooking the park." I opened the file. I pulled out a stack of spreadsheets. "But Phoenix is not a company. It is a checking account. And it is not his. It is mine." I tossed the pages into the air. They fluttered down like confetti, landing on the dirty floor, on the guests' shoes, on Brittany's ruined dress. "For 3 years, Brandon has not sold a single unit of software," I said. "Not one. Instead, he has sold you a story. And he paid for that story with $4 million he embezzled from the Sullivan Family Trust." A gasp went through the room. I saw an investor in the front row, a man I recognized from the club, turn pale. He checked his phone, likely realizing his portfolio had just taken a hit. The diamonds on his wife's finger. Stolen money. The lease on the apartment, stolen money. The deposit for the plaza that bounced yesterday. Stolen money. I looked at Brandon. "You wanted to be a big man's son," I said. "You wanted to be a king. But a king provides. A thief just takes." Brandon began to sob. It was a wet, ugly sound. "Dad, stop," he pleaded. "Please, not in front of them. In front of them is the only way it matters," I replied. "You lived for the audience, Brandon. Now you die for them." I turned my attention to Brittany. She was standing next to Julian Vance, clutching his arm as if he were a life raft. She looked defiant, but her eyes were darting around the room, looking for an exit that didn't exist. "And then we have the bride," I said. "Brittany. The influencer. The woman who demanded a royal wedding because she believed she was marrying a prince. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I held it up to the microphone. Brittany thinks she is a victim here, I said. She thinks she was tricked by a broke husband. But Brittany is not a victim. She is a hedge fund. She manages risk. And yesterday, when she realized the market was crashing, she tried to short the stock. I pressed play. The audio from the penthouse bug blasted through the speaker. It was crystal clear. I can't marry him, Julian. I can't tie myself to a loser who is about to be indicted for fraud. I know where Brandon keeps his client lists. I can bring that with me. A little dowry. The recording played on. The guests listened to her offer to sell corporate secrets. They listened to her agree to leave her fiancé at the altar for a seat on a private jet. They listened to her cold transactional calculation of my son's worth. When the recording ended, the silence in the room was absolute. It was heavier than the heat. It was the silence of a social execution. Brandon looked at Brittany. His face was a mask of betrayal. He had stolen for her. He had lied for her. He had destroyed his relationship with his father for her. And she had sold him out for a plane ticket before the ink was even dry on the indictment. You called him, Brandon whispered. You were going to leave me. Brittany didn't look at him. She looked at Julian Vance. She smiled a desperate rictus grin. Julian, she said, her voice trembling. Julian, tell them I was just scared. I didn't mean it. We are friends, right? You came to save me. Julian Vance looked down at her. He was a man who had made his fortune by being more ruthless than anyone else in the room. He looked at the oil stain on her dress. He looked at her desperate, grasping hands. He laughed. It wasn't a polite laugh. It was a bark of genuine amusement. Save you? Julian asked loud enough for the back row to hear. Brittany, I came here to watch the circus, and I came for the hard drive. He reached out and snatched the designer handbag from her shoulder. He ripped it open. He pulled out the silver external hard drive she had stolen from the penthouse. This is what I came for, Julian said, holding it up. He looked at me. He nodded respectfully. Mr. Sullivan, Julian said, I believe this belongs to you. I have no interest in stolen property, especially when it comes with baggage. He tossed the hard drive to Goldman, who caught it with one hand. Then Julian looked back at Brittany. And as for Saint-Tropez, he said, smoothing his white suit, I think I'll go alone. You don't really fit the aesthetic anymore, darling. You look like, what did you call it, a bad investment. The crowd laughed. It was a cruel, nervous laughter, but it was laughter. They were turning on her. The pack had smelled blood. Brittany stood there, stripped of her dignity, her backup plan, and her pride. She looked at Brandon, but he had turned his back on her. She looked at the guests, but they were filming her with their phones. She looked at me. You did this, she screamed. You ruined everything. You are a monster. I stepped down from the pallet. I walked over to her. I stood toe to toe with her in the dirt. I didn't ruin anything, Brittany, I said. I just turned on the lights. The roaches were already there. I signaled to the federal agents. Take them, I said. The agents moved in. It was a blur of motion. They grabbed Brandon first. He didn't fight. He went limp, his spirit completely broken. They spun him around and slammed him against the graffiti-covered wall. Brandon Sullivan, an agent, recited, You are under arrest for wire fraud, bank fraud, and embezzlement. You have the right to remain silent. The click of the handcuffs was sharp and final. Then they turned to Brittany. She tried to back away. No, she whimpered. I didn't do anything. I was just the wife I didn't know. Mrs. Sullivan, the female agent said, grabbing Brittany's wrist and twisting it behind her back. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, possession of stolen trade secrets, and receipt of stolen property. Ow! "You're hurting me," Brittany shrieked. "My dress! You're ruining my dress! Your dress is evidence, ma'am," the agent said, snapping the cuffs on. I watched as they were marched out of the warehouse. They walked past the guests they had tried to impress. They walked past the empty altar. They walked past Julian Vance, who was lighting a cigarette and watching with a bored expression. Brandon looked at me one last time before they pushed him into the back of the SUV. His eyes were wide and wet. He looked like he wanted to say something. Maybe he wanted to say sorry. Maybe he wanted to beg. I didn't give him the chance. I turned my back on him. I walked over to Goldman. I took the hard drive from his hand. "Is it all there?" I asked. Goldman nodded. "Every file, plus the evidence of the transfers she made to her personal offshore account. We have her dead to rights, Conrad." "Good," I said. I looked around the room. The guests were silent now, unsure of what to do. The show was over. The curtain had fallen. I walked back to the microphone. "The wedding is canceled," I announced. "Go home and take your gifts with you. My son doesn't need them where he is going." I walked out of Rusty's. I stepped into the sunlight. The air still smelled of garbage and exhaust, but to me it smelled like victory. I climbed into the back of my town car. "To the airport," I said to the driver. The car pulled away, leaving the chaos behind. I didn't look back. I poured myself a glass of scotch from the decanter in the console. I took a sip. It burned clean and sharp. I had lost a son, yes, but I had saved the family name. And in my world, that was the only currency that mattered. The snow came early to Montana this year. It started falling in late October, a soft white blanket that covered the scars on the land and silenced the world. I sat on my porch, wrapped in a heavy wool coat, watching the flakes drift down. The air was crisp and clean, smelling of pine and wood smoke. It was the smell of peace. It has been exactly 1 year since I walked out of a warehouse in Queens, leaving my son in handcuffs and his wife in ruins. The mail carrier, a young man who drives his route with a tenacity I admire, had just left. He dropped a single envelope into the box at the end of the driveway. I didn't need to look at the return address to know who it was from. The paper was cheap, the handwriting cramped and desperate. It was the monthly missive from the Federal Correctional Institution in Otisville. I walked down the driveway, the snow crunching under my boots. I retrieved the letter. It felt light in my hand, light as a lie. I walked back into the house. The fire was roaring in the stone hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls. I poured myself a glass of Cabernet, a 1982 vintage I had bought at auction years ago. I had been saving it for a special occasion, for a wedding perhaps, or a birth. Today I opened it for a Tuesday, because every day of peace was a special occasion. I sat in my leather chair and sliced the envelope open with a letter opener. I unfolded the paper. "Dear Dad," it began. "I hope this letter finds you well. I have been thinking a lot about the ranch. I miss the smell of the apple trees. I miss the horses. I have been working in the library here. It gives me time to think. I know I made mistakes. I know I hurt you. But I am still your son, Brittany. She was the one who pushed me. She was the one who wanted the money. I was just trying to make her happy." I stopped reading. It was always the same. It wasn't my fault. I was influenced. I was weak. He still didn't get it. He still thought the crime was listening to Brittany. He didn't understand that the crime was the weakness itself. The crime was looking at his father and seeing a bank account instead of a human being. He was serving 5 years for wire fraud, but he was serving a life sentence for character failure. I didn't read the rest. I didn't need to know if he needed money for the commissary or if he wanted me to visit. I already knew the answer. I stood up and walked to the fireplace. I tossed the letter onto the logs. It didn't explode. It didn't spark. It just curled up, turning brown, then black, then ash. The words disappeared. The pleas for forgiveness vanished up the chimney. I took a sip of the wine. It was complex, earthy, with notes of cherry and leather. It tasted like history. I thought about Brittany. Goldman had given me an update last week. She avoided jail time by turning state's witness against Julian Vance. She testified about the stolen data about the corporate espionage. Julian was currently awaiting trial on federal trade secret charges. Brittany was back in Ohio living with her parents. She was working as a hostess at a chain restaurant. Her Instagram account had been deleted. Her brand was dead. She was just another girl who flew too close to the sun and melted her wings. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt nothing. They were just characters in a book I had finished reading. I looked around the room. The vase Catherine had made was gone, replaced by a simple clay pot I had bought at a local market. The dust was gone. The noise was gone. The ranch was thriving. Without the financial drain of Phoenix, without the black hole of Brandon's lifestyle sucking away the capital I had reinvested in the land. I had bought the neighboring parcel, the one with the stream. I had hired 2 new hands to help with the cattle. The developers from Texas had called again last month. They offered $3 million for the water rights. I told them to go to hell. I wasn't preserving this land for Brandon. I wasn't holding it for a legacy that didn't exist. I was holding it for myself. I was holding it for Catherine. I walked over to the mantel and picked up her photo. She was smiling that soft, knowing smile that always made me feel like I was the only man in the world. "We did good, Katie," I whispered to the glass. "We built something real. It didn't turn out the way we planned. The fruit fell far from the tree, but the tree is still standing." I sat back down and watched the fire burn down to embers. People ask me if I am lonely. They see an old man in a big house miles from the nearest town with no family coming for Christmas, no grandchildren running through the halls. They look at me with that same pity the guests had at the wedding. They don't understand. Loneliness is living in a house full of people who don't see you. Loneliness is sitting at a dinner table surrounded by sharks who are waiting for you to bleed. Loneliness is having a son who only calls when the credit card is declined. I am not lonely. I am solitary. There is a difference. I have my books. I have my land. I have my memories of a woman who loved me when I had nothing. And I have the silence. The glorious, expensive, hard-earned silence. I finished the wine. I set the glass down on the table. I stood up and walked to the window. The snow was falling harder now, erasing the world outside, turning the ranch into a white void. Tomorrow I would have to plow the driveway. I would have to break the ice on the water troughs. I would have to feed the cattle. It was hard work. It was honest work. And it was mine. I turned off the lamp. I walked up the stairs to my bedroom. I didn't check my phone. I didn't check the markets. The ledger was balanced. The debts were paid. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in a year, I didn't dream of weddings or lawsuits or screaming matches. I dreamed of apple trees and the sound of them growing in the dark. In the end, the greatest inheritance a parent can leave isn't a trust fund. It is character. I spent a lifetime building a financial empire, but I nearly bankrupted my soul by enabling a son who valued the wallet over the man holding it. True wealth isn't found in the cars you drive or the parties you throw. It is found in the integrity you keep when the lights go out. We cannot save people from their own choices, even our own children. Sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is let their child fall so they can finally learn how to stand on their own 2 feet. If you believe that respect must be earned and never bought, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of justice served cold.